Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's January 10th, 2019, and we're underway at 7 p.m. I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year and welcome the council back for another, hopefully, very productive year in Helotes. We've got a lot of exciting things coming up, and looking forward to getting things done and out of the way as quick as we can. Tonight we have our agenda starting with the invocation, and Council Member Meadows will take care of that. And then we have the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and Texas flag. So if you would please stand for the pledges and the invocation.
Wise and gracious God, thank you for the many and abundant blessings that we share in our city of Helotes, the state of Texas, and the United States of America. Thank you for our ability to be involved in a useful work for our citizens, and thank you for our freedoms that we share. Please protect our local police, fire, and emergency workers, as well as those other public workers who work on our behalf. Please protect our armed forces personnel and provide guidance to our national leaders in these challenging times. Guide our actions and deliberations in this evening and into the future in 2019. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Did I see a scout come in?
In the back.
Boy Scout? What troop are you with?
701.
Which one?
701.
701? Okay. Where do y'all meet?
At Oak Hills Church.
Okay. And you here for citizenship or what?
Citizenship, yes.
Okay. What's your name? Nicholas. Welcome. If you stick around to the end and have questions, let us know and we'll try and help you out. Okay, next up we have some recognition. This is totally new, and Chief Moreland had come to me a while back with this idea, and I thought it was a great idea, and just told him to put a program together and we'd see how it works, and so this is the fruition of that. Do you have the hand mic?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll let Scott kind of brief council and the audience on his thought process and how this came to be, and then we didn't do a dress rehearsal on this, but we think it'll work best if we'll bring each one of you up one at a time and give you the certificate, and then when all three of you are up here, then we'll take a group photo and that kind of thing. And any family members, if you want to take pictures while it's being presented, the badges and everything, just feel free to get up and take pictures however you want to, okay? Okay, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I need to mention that this was a process that we started several months ago. We had 5 firefighters who participated in the testing process. It was a written test, a driving test, and a pump operations test. And of the 5, 4 passed with flying colors, and we're promoting 3 for the positions that we have open this evening. I want to give special thanks to Councilman Buys. He kind of spearheaded this, and for lack of a better description, he stayed on my back about it to make sure I got it done. So thank you very much, Bert. Without any further ado, Mayor?
Tell them a little bit about the position.
I sure will. The engineer position is basically the driver position of the fire truck. It's an essential position. It is a position that we would consider to be critical. He is the person responsible for ensuring that that truck operates properly, both driving to and from the gas station and at a fire. And without a good pump operator and a good driver, we can't function at a fire. So this is, aside from the company officer, the driver is the next, or the engineer is the next most critical component of that fire engine. A $500,000 piece of equipment is useless without the crew that's on it. And everyone should understand that that crew operates at it's optimum when you have a good officer, a good engineer, and what we call the guys that ride on the back of the truck, or used to ride on the back of the truck, good tailboards. And it's always better to have as many good qualified people on there as possible. These three guys tonight, I think, are probably some of the most qualified people in the entire department. And personally, I am very proud of them as individuals, and I'm very proud to be presenting this to them tonight. So, let's move on.
I'll say, on the written test, it was 100 questions, and Scott put it together using various sources. And I told Bert was a San Antonio firefighter and their EMT for 36 years, and I was a volunteer firefighter many, many years ago. And so I told Scott, I said, we'll both take your test. Bert gave up pretty quick. I'm still working on mine. I don't know where you found some of those questions, but they were way beyond me. But anyway, good job, guys. You want to get each one of them up here?
Let me, I'm just gonna read real quick what one of these says, and then we'll bring the guys up individually. And if you brought your significant other, we'd like for you to pin the badge on the firefighter's shirt. It's kind of a tradition.
I'm gonna be Rodney's significant other.
It's a little scary.
We're gonna present each man with their certificate, and the certificate in this case, or in all of them, says City of Helotes Fire Department Certificate of Promotion awarded to, in this case, Abraham J. Freiberg, better known as AJ, to the rank of firefighter engineer. Today's date signed by myself and the mayor. So AJ, if you wanna come up.
You want to come up too? You're his brother, right? Oh, okay. Oh, you're more important. Come on over here and we'll get some pictures. I think Susan's gonna be taking pictures. Susan, you wanna? Scott, why don't you get in here?
Get on the other side.
Yeah.
Middle of the podium here.
It was also interesting to watch each one of them do their driving test over at O'Connor High School, dodging the traffic cones, and as I understand it, y'all did a good job on that.
Let me get one more.
Says ouch, just stop.
Call the medics.
I think we've got it covered.
You retiring the old badge or putting it in?
Actually, these guys wanna keep their old
Oh,
badges.
okay, good. Still got mine. Somewhere. Just so it doesn't turn into a blood draw.
No, it's not. It's three.
Cool, why don't you get there, it's Scott, you get, and we'll get one last picture with the new badge.
Good one.
Okay. Got it.
Good. Congratulations again.
All right, moving on. Our next certificate and badge go to Rowdy Johnson and his significant other.
You can do better. I think you kept your makeup to a minimum. Yes. Congratulations.
All right, I'll take that, 'cause I've got to. any chance of somebody getting stabbed by one of these tonight, this is it. Just out of spite. Okay, last but certainly not least.
How's their temperature over there right now? Good? Plenty.
I'm trying to like not get that in and.
Hey, Scott, Cynthia had a good, let's get a picture of all three of them together and do them.
It's important. It is important, but not for us. It's for them.
Yeah. They're doing this year, the first time it's going to.
It's okay.
They didn't show up at P&Z. The application to the sign company was a year 2017.
Okay. Okay.
Shame on San
He's a
Antonio.
new battery for the flash.
We have to roll over either. If I was a neighboring, you gave me the double sign, I'd be right back and say, hey, give me one. Thank you. It's the precedent. It's the same sign guy that did over here. Same company.
It's really a significant achievement, and I congratulate again all three of you and the five that applied and tested. As I said, I can appreciate if you made a good grade on the written test, that you must have really studied. Scott did a real good job of putting that together. And the driving test looked like it took some skill too. So again, congratulations, and we're so pleased to have you all in the department, and congratulations on your new engineer position. Okay, next up, we have citizen to be heard. Nobody signed up? Okay. Then that takes us to our consent agenda. Tonight, we have 2 items, 4 and 5. Consent agenda in our type of meeting is just a grouping together of some routine business, considered routine by me and the staff. And the idea is to get a motion and a second to approve each item in the consent agenda. So I would ask if there are any questions or requests to pull an item. Anything? No questions? No. Okay, then I would look for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 4 through 5.
Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda items 4 and 5.
We have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
Second.
We'll give him a chance to leave. Okay, we have a motion from Meadows, a second from Fredericks. No discussion being required. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Consent agenda items 4 and 5 are approved. Item number 6 is discussion and action on a request for approval of a variance to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, signs for wall signage at Del Norte, Taqueria, and Pandaria, located at 11590 Gulm Road, Suite 108. You should have on your spot the recommendation from Planning and Zoning. Did not surprise me. And so we would have a motion and a second, if you would, to discuss and take action on item number 6.
Mayor, I make a motion we discuss take action on 6.
I have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Fredericks. So a motion from Buys, second from Fredericks. Bert, it's your motion, so you're up.
Okay. Well, of course, it's way bigger than it should be. But the only caveat to it is it seems like, I don't know how it happened, but they actually got a sign permit from the city of San Antonio. And while I feel sorry for the guy or the owner or whoever it is that did this, in my mind, we still need to follow our ordinances and agree with the P&Z's recommendation of disapproval. I'd like to hear what the other council members have to say also.
Paul?
I mean, I drove by. I don't think it's a little unproportional to the other signs, but it is a busy shopping center. I looked at it and I really didn't have a problem with the sign, but kind of in agreement with Councilman Buys, I think if we allowed it, it would set a bad precedent. So while I don't have an issue with the sign, I think we're going to have to disapprove it, in my opinion.
Cynthia?
Are the other signs, signs that were approved by Helotes?
Yes.
And so they knew to go to come here?
Yes.
Because it's on the master. How did this guy
Have no idea.
Did he not read? I mean, it would seem like if the other ones could do it, he could do the same thing. I mean, if
Yes.
they all got the same information.
Yes.
So,
Apparently it's the
And
same
and
sign
the- And the
company.
landlord should have, they should have gone to the landlord and said, hey, where do I go for my sign permit?
so I'm in the same boat. I hate, it doesn't look that disproportional, but I'm looking at a picture and I'm not, I didn't drive by as a fellow councilman. I agree, if they believe that it does look unproportional to the other ones, then I don't think it should, and it's twice the size that it's allotted. That's a lot. Not 25%, which we sometimes allow, but when it's that much, I think it's something that I'm not going to be able
Well,
to.
and the master sign plan gives them the option of asking for a 25% variance if it comes to council
Right.
and planning and zoning, so they could have done that. Anything else?
No.
Jim?
Same opinion. I understand about just setting a bad precedent, but I'm concerned about the invalidating of our sign ordinances if we knowingly would approve something that far out of what is compliance, because that's even beyond the 25%. So we'd be saying, no, for you, we're just going to ignore our own sign program. So I can't support that.
Okay, Alex?
I have to agree with all of them, and also planning and zoning. I think it's interesting, if you take a look at the fine print, that you'll notice that the application for the sign from the company itself was actually dated in 2017. And the city of San Antonio permit wasn't until 12 months later. So the company who created the sign had clear, ample time to follow the right procedure and such. The sign has been up for some time, and I don't know whether it was up prior to their getting something from San Antonio or not, but that establishment has had a master sign plan for well over 3 years in place, long before this business took residency there. So they should have known it. Secondly, this sign individual is the same one who put the sign over the El Rodeo. If you look at the application, it's the same company. So, and he put that sign up without getting a permit and was way too large, and we've had to back that off. In the November meeting at the Planning and Zoning, there were 2 signs that had come up at that time, and Planning and Zoning worked with the one sign, and then the second one was the Storage Mart, which you guys saw at the December meeting. And after that meeting, our Planning and Zoning Chairman, Michelle, went and talked to him and said, how hard is it for you guys to know? To the guy who was with the Storage Mart, he was the owner of the sign company that was putting that in. And he said, there's no sign company worth their salt that doesn't know that they always have to get a permit first. He said, they all know that. That's their business. And he said, that's why he hadn't made his sign. He said, anybody in that business knows that they have to get a permit no matter where they are before they actually put the sign up. And so anybody who's going the opposite direction is trying to skirt the system around. With regard to this particular sign, it's not even close to the 20 square feet allowed, and I would have to concur with my colleagues in saying, no, we cannot approve it.
Okay, just to toss something else out, when I first looked at this, I asked Rick, why he was even bringing it, and since it was obviously over the master sign ordinance, he says, well, we've done it before. So I asked him to pull that information, and back in 2016, there were actually 2 other signs for this particular little retail center. One of them was for 100% over, and both planning and zoning and you guys declined that one, denied it. And then the other one was not, as I recall, not quite 100% over. They were both in the same meeting, and that was also denied. So this falls in line with similar requests, and the consistency is probably good. Bert, any follow-up?
No.
Paul?
No.
Cynthia?
Nope.
Nothing? Okay, then we'll call the question. All in favor of, and again, a yes vote would be to approve. A no vote would be to deny. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
Didn't mean to say
didn't
that?
mean
You
to
want to
say
take that back?
I was thinking about the next agenda. Okay. Sorry.
All opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, it's denied unanimously. That takes us to item number 7, the bylaws for the Helotes Area Community Band. This is just something we've been working on for a while because even though the band has been in existence since July of 2008, and there was council action taken at that time to support the band throughout the years, they never had any real official bylaws. So we went ahead and put these together, and through several drafts came finally up with this draft we're presenting to you tonight. And the agenda request pretty well explains it, but I would look for a motion and a second then for you guys to discuss and take action on the bylaws for the band.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on the item number 7 as written.
We have a motion from Massey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Meadows. Okay, Cynthia, it's your motion.
I have a couple of handouts I just wanted to pass to you guys, because I'm going to reference them as I'm speaking. First, I want to say that I think that we have an exceptional community band. They're very, very, it's kind of hard to believe it's 10 years since this all started, and it started very small. The thing that I'm looking at it from a different point of view. So saying that this is a great band, so what I'm going to say next has nothing to, does not contradict what I just said. When we first started, we were never, as a city council, officially asked to do a proclamation. If you look at the local government code that I just gave you on the back page, it says the governing body of the municipality may adopt an ordinance or resolution to enable the municipality to maintain the ban. I know it says may, and what we did instead of doing that, and I understand why, it's because we did things a little different than normal. Usually, when a band wants to start up and be the municipal band, it's usually the college or a high school band leader who'll come to a city council and present and say that they want to be the official band, and they ask for a proclamation or a resolution of support from the city. In this case, it was the opposite. It was our city, actually the mayor, who thought it was a great idea and put it out in the newsletter and brought people in. So it was done a little differently. And so because it was done differently, I feel like the mayor has always felt a strong responsibility for the band. But it was never brought to us officially except for, okay, funding. And the funding was always in Parks and Rec. And the reason I think that he didn't ask for a resolution or proclamation at that point is because he wasn't sure if the band was going to work out. So it started out very slow. We just had 5 or 7 people at the beginning. So I understand why he didn't want us to weigh in at an official meeting with an official proclamation. Let's see if this thing is going to pan out. Okay, so now 10 years later, it definitely has panned out. We have 60 people in the band, and the band has grown up. Okay, so my responsibility as a city council person is to look at what is best for the city, and that is to uphold the health, wealth, and the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, and that's primarily through the fire and the police departments, and that is our main focus. Obviously, we do a lot of other things when we have extra funds. So what I did was I looked to see how other municipal bands in Texas and actually in the nation go about their business. I did not find one that was not a 501c3. And the reason for that is because they're able then to stand alone. They're also able to solicit funds, and the city itself does not have to be the sole proprietor of taking care of it. And it also relieves the city of the responsibility. As these bylaws said, I was very concerned at the very end of the bylaws, it gives us a responsibility if something happens for our lawyers to take care of or to represent each and every member of the 60-member band. And I think that if we have a group doing something on the city or on behalf of the city and something happens, I think that kicks in anyway. However, if they are a 501c3, they are able to, again, get their own funds and have their own membership. Let me tell you this. I'm a member of a National Writers Organization. Same kind of thing, it's a 501c3. We have members. Our members pay up to $60 to $100 a year in sustaining dues, and that sustains our organization along with other things. With 60 members, if this organization, which is now viable, big enough, becomes a 501c3, they have 60 members and they just charge $50 a year on membership. That's $3,000, just alone on membership, to be able to help sustain themselves. And I just think that we should not be their parent. They are adults, they are a group of artists, individuals, and I believe that they need to stand alone. I have no problem with giving them partial funding. If you look at these two, this piece of paper talks about the two community bands here in Texas. The city of Wiley, with a total population of 50,000, their total revenue is $41 million. Their band was started by a high school band director in 2016 who came and gave a presentation asking to be. They are a 501c3. And after the presentation, the city approved a proclamation of support. The Plano Community Band, which is near Dallas, total population 286,000. Their total revenues are $340 million. The Plano Community Band was established in '79, and in '84 it became a 501c3. When it began, the City of Plano Parks and Rec Department and the Cultural Arts Association of Plano sponsored the band. And the band today is funded in part by the City of Plano. I have no problem with giving our band, supporting our band, having a resolution and a proclamation saying that we support them. I do not want to have them as another entity of the city. I do not want our city to be responsible. I think that they should be responsible for themselves. They are viable now. I think they should, so my suggestion, and I really believe this is best for not only them, but for the city, is for them to become a 501c3, that we would give them our support on that condition. That's how I feel. I just think that it's wrong for us. I don't think that we should be oversight over a band. These bylaws give us approval on what they do, how they do it, and the other thing too is it's going to be subject to whatever new city council comes up. If they decide the mayor's not going to be here forever, and he's of course the father of this band, and someday somebody's going to say, you know what, I don't want to do this. Now this gives the council the opportunity to get rid of it. But do you really want to do that to all these people who have been together and who will continue and maybe grow, and then all of a sudden say, we're pulling funding, we're not going to do this to you anymore? And that could happen if this is allowed. I think it's a bad thing for them, and I think it's a bad thing for us. So that is the way I feel about this.
Jim?
Couple of questions. What was the impetus for the bylaws? Did that come from the band? Did it come from the city? Did it come from the administrator?
They've talked about, asked me about it quite a few times. They had a real simple bylaws several years back. They had also talked about whether or not to become a 501c3. The structure of the band, the way it relates to the city, is just something that evolved, and it's worked out really well. And it makes us very unique because, as Cynthia said, there aren't many municipalities that completely support a band. I will say that through the years, the cost of music and stands and everything has been quite minimal compared to a lot of our other events, and I'll get into that after you all speak. But I never quite thought of myself as the father of the band. I do know that I've been very supportive and watched it all along the way, and I know how much those people give of their lives and their schedules because they're excited about being part of the Helotes Area Community Band. I was hesitant to encourage them to become a 501c3 because then they would have to take care of all of their own fundraising and have treasurers and bank accounts and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, it's part of it. I disagree that every single community band is a 501c3, and I too, through the years, have researched many community bands, not only in Texas, but throughout the country, and there are hundreds of them, many more than what Councilmember Massey pointed out tonight. Waco, Abilene, Fort Worth, Plano, a lot of the bigger cities, but there are a lot of very small cities too that have community bands, and I don't know how each one of them is structured, but I do know that they have the name of the city in front of them, and that the city at some point has events that are centered around the band, just like we do. Without this band, we would write off probably half of our community events, from the 4th of July or Independence Day concert to the Veterans Day concert to movie nights to the Christmas concerts and the Light in the Lights. The band is very critical in all of those. So it pays us back very heavily for the small amount of money that we put into it. And I disagree that it takes a proclamation. I was never afraid to bring a proclamation. It just never came up at the time. I went back to look at what council action was taken, and I know I had an agenda item, but I couldn't find where any action was ever taken on it. And the word may is critical. If it says shall, then you have to have an ordinance or a resolution. When it says may, you don't have to, and we don't. So it really is not any difference. Hopefully that answers your question.
That answers that first one. A couple of comments, what Cynthia's approach was to this. One, on the very last page, I'm in total agreement that particular clause seems to be one direction. It says we'll hold them harmless, but there's nothing in there that says that the band will have any sort of vehicle to hold the city harmless for inappropriate actions on the part of band members. As I read it, it's strictly that we're going to hold the band harmless only. That concerns me slightly in the way it's written, versus them having some sort of a vehicle for if they do something that's totally inappropriate, that we are somehow made whole. I campaigned on and I came in on the idea that we're becoming a bigger city and we need bigger city ideas. I've got to tell you that on this particular issue, I'm not sure we're quite there yet. That we need to be akin to Plano or
Right.
Wiley or some of these other areas where we codify this quite to the extent that we have. But I see merit in having bylaws. And I would just suggest that maybe a slowdown would be appropriate to get with the band itself and study this a lot further and see what do we need, what do we want. I'm somewhat against the idea of saying, well, if they only paid $50, we could have this thing funded. I've watched the band in action, and they put a lot more in than $50 would ever get us, as far as the time, the effort, what they put into it, and just the quality of what we have. So I would hate to lose what we have today. As I said, I campaigned on the fact that we are becoming a bigger city. We're not yet 50,000. We're certainly not going to be 200,000, and we have to look to the future, and what Councilman Massey was saying, we have to look towards future councils. I would only caution that if we lost all funding next year, the worst thing that would happen would be to go to them and say, you're going to have to self-fund and create a vehicle for doing it. We wouldn't be any worse shape than if we were funding it. But if we create a 501c3, I think we create the vehicle by people saying, well, this doesn't need to be in a budget. Let them self-fund the thing and charge for events and whatever. So I would only caution, I think it's coming up too quickly. I don't think we need to move that quickly on it. I think we can basically put together a plan that would survive the next 6 months and just sit down and say, what do we really want to do with the band? I think we've put the idea of having a community band to rest. We want to have a community band, and I think that's been pretty well settled. But how it moves forward, I don't think that we need to make a decision on having a set of bylaws unless there's something that I don't know that's an impending action that we need to have this done in January 2019.
Yeah, that was never the intent. We've been working on this for several months, and both Chuck and Charlie Kuntz have looked over it and had their input, and we've modified it, and we've run it by the attorneys. And so certainly your option to postpone this until a later date. I don't know exactly what that would accomplish, but it's no problem for me. But if you have some thoughts of what you'd like that we could incorporate in here, that's fine. Their concern has mainly been that just at any time they could be done away with. And one of the reasons we did this was that it would take council action and not just a mayor in the future. It would take actually some council action to disband the band.
Where is that? Where is that in the,
Page 6,
Page 6.
that's what I was looking for.
under C.
That it would take a two-thirds majority of the council to get rid of the band. That was the primary impetus of having the bylaws.
Okay, well, I guess I heard the cart before the horse then, because that's what I'm looking for. I would support having some institutionalization of the band. I don't necessarily support that we need to create a vehicle where they can become self-funding in the immediate future. So those are my only comments so far.
Okay, Alex?
Thank you, Mayor. I too had some questions initially about what prompted this. After 10 years, all of a sudden, we're looking at it. I know you say for months, but, and I understand that there was a ramping up in a large process there. I certainly don't have a concern or a problem with the city providing financial support. I think we've done that. We provide that through the Parks and Recreation budget. We have a chance to look at that every time. So there's really, to me, there's two things. One is to whether we need to codify everything and essentially make this a quasi-city thing as opposed to a collection of volunteers. The second thing is, if we decide that that is the right way to go, is the wording of some of the things in the bylaws and how that basically could cause issues for the city itself, and I'll get to some of that. I'm not going to read through all of it with you, but, so the first step makes me a little bit worried. We have a lot of people who volunteer for the city. And the way I always considered the community band is a collection of volunteers for the city.
Right.
And other volunteers don't get to have bylaws that dictate who the leader is of the volunteer. We have people who come in and do things here in the city hall. We have others who have volunteered over the years and worked on the park. And yet, this puts it in a quasi-city organization as opposed to just strictly being a volunteer. The reason I say it that way is because it comes to the second part. There are things in here that talk about, like, for example, Article 5.1, membership is restricted to all serious musicians. Who gets to determine that? What if the band leader decides you're not serious enough, and somebody gets mad, sues the city because a city official, as designated by our action here, has just now created some discriminatory action? I don't know if that will happen or not, but I could see how there could be hurt feelings, and hurt feelings sometimes come out in legal action. And so I get worried about whether or not, when we start making this formal, that we have specifics. I mean, you have to wear a certain color suit, you have to wear a tie or a tuxedo, or you have to, and you start to go into all that. And I understand that that makes the band look nice, but then all of a sudden you start to make it very different than being a volunteer. And to me, we're kind of crossing that line. Maybe that's the intent, is to cross that line, but that part is where I start to look at that. The other thing is, we all know that when it comes to budget, which is where we talk about, it's a majority of council that determines the budget. And yet these bylaws would seem to actually require 2/3 to eliminate the ban, which now makes it a difference than just any budgetary or any other action or that sort of thing. So I would, I mean, that's where I said the wording of certain areas in these bylaws, if we go that route, start to get a little bit more formal, to the point where I can see that we better look at that and say, are we being equitable? I mean, if we had a group of volunteers who wanted to go out and do all sorts of things with the park, we would say no or yes based on our budget, which is a simple majority, right? The finances of the city are based on a majority of that, and yet this binds, the band sort of has a super majority requirement, because 2/3 means 4 out of 5. And I get that is a concern to say, hey, we put all this effort in, but all the volunteers of the city have put effort in and could be asked to leave at any time. And the only way to avoid that is for them to go into their own organization where they have that part. So I have some concerns with this. I don't know whether or not a delay in this action could alleviate those concerns in the next few months and give us a chance to look into more of that or not. But if it's today, I would have to say I'm not in favor of moving at this point today until some of those other concerns are addressed.
Bert?
Wow. I guess I've heard a lot here. I'm getting kind of confused, really, to tell you the truth. It seems like I was in a couple of the meetings with Charlie and Chuck, and it seems like their main concern, like the mayor was saying, is that they're afraid that they can just be done away with. That was their main concern with doing these bylaws. That's what they were mostly concerned about. Maybe there's a way that we can put their mind at ease by doing something other than bylaws. I don't know if there's a way to do that.
If they become a 501c3, they can, and we just support them in that, we can't dissolve them. They can only dissolve themselves.
Well, see, this was,
That's why all these other bands are 501c3s. They're not at the whim of the government.
I would, the way I'm leaning right now, I would like to see this either postponed. I'd like to see it postponed, and we need to meet with Chuck and Charlie again and tell them the concerns that each council member has, in my mind.
I'll meet with them. It says here that we should appoint a nonpartisan citizen commission.
You would not be nonpartisan?
Neither would you, and neither would he.
No, I didn't say I would be,
understand. That's what
okay?
I'm saying. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
There's
Paul?
5 of us here, by the way.
Let's keep it,
To be honest with you, I'm very confused on this issue right now.
yeah, me too, a little bit, but we'll talk about it. Paul?
I guess, I mean, I know these people do contribute quite a bit in their cost of uniforms, obviously, if they're having to do professional attire and everything, and that's, to me, impressive and part of a membership. And I guess we could, as a government entity, help fund a 501(c)(3) if they opted to do that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And the only thing that I really, when I was reading through here, is the leadership seems to be kind of just top-heavy with just the band director. They weren't interested in doing any kind of trustee or board of directors where you had multiple people that would kind of just help run it.
Through the years, the band has elected not to do that because that alone has destroyed many bands, and this band is a very cohesive unit. Everybody gets along, they're like a big family, and they like it that way.
So they like just having the one director? Okay. Well, it's kind of their organization. That's the only thing that I had a question about.
Okay, just some of my thoughts on the volunteers that Alex brought up. You cannot compare this to a single volunteer who comes to City Hall and helps run wires. We don't really do the volunteer day anymore. We have church groups all the time that come up and help in the park, and you guys never even know about it. They volunteer. They go out and pick up trash. They do it in Old Town. We have all kinds of volunteer groups that come through here, and it's a one afternoon or a one morning hit. We don't sponsor those volunteers. There's no other organization within the city of volunteers like the band, and it is a formal unit. It's grown into much more than I ever dreamed, but it's exactly what Charlie Kuntz's vision was when we first started it. As far as the dress code, everyone in the band is aware of the dress code, for formal concerts. And then they all have their polo shirts and their other shirts that they wear, and they're given the option of which ones they can choose for movie nights and stuff like that, because that's an informal setting, and they all buy their own shirts. The only thing we furnish is music and the venues and those types of things. All we were looking for here was just some bylaws, simple bylaws, that would give them some structure and some confidence that no one person in the city could just say, you guys no longer exist. It would take some council action. I haven't heard anything in the way of, other than make them become a 501c3, that would be something we would change in here, except your concerns about the volunteer organization. We do have TML insurance, which covers us whenever we have volunteers do anything, and that's part of what we do. It covers the jazz festival, it covers the Carnival parade and all of those things. As far as financing, this is a small fraction of what it takes for us to run the jazz festival. We're easily $15,000 a year for a one afternoon and evening event, $15,000 out of our Parks and Recreation, but we put that in there, that's part of the budget. The Carnival parade generally runs close to $15,000 for one Saturday morning. And, you know, the other events, nothing comes free. We have costs to rent barricades, costs to rent different kinds of equipment, sound equipment, all of those things go into each one of our events. But it's part of Parks and Recreation. It's part of being a small town. And I think you guys are overthinking it. I mean, it's your prerogative. And if you want to postpone it indefinitely or postpone it to a date certain, I really don't care. I just wanted to bring this to you guys to help the band have a little bit of confidence that they're just not going to be done away with instantaneously.
Well, I'd like to
Can
turn
I
the
speak?
thermostat
Can
down
I
a little bit.
Sure, you're going to get a chance. Just wait a second. You're up next. Go ahead. It's your motion.
My suggestion is to do what the Texas Government Code says, which is Section 308.007. It says the Citizen Commission, the governing body of the municipality, shall appoint a nonpartisan citizen commission composed of 3, 4, or 5 members to negotiate contracts, formulate rules, and do all other things necessary or proper to establish, control, and maintain the band. That wasn't done, apparently.
Of course not.
Well, it says shall. Okay, so that's one thing that we're not doing, and maybe we can push this off on 4 or 5 other nonpartisan citizens who can come up with something. But I still believe that the 501c3 is not that difficult to get. They'll be able to get it. That would solve a lot of the problems. They can create their own bylaws. I'm surprised that the band director is not here to talk about this. They just, because it's you're the father. That's what I'm trying to say. They need to kind of represent themselves and say, we really want this band, this is viable, we think we're doing a great thing for the city, and they are. But I'm disappointed. I thought that they would be here, some representatives of the band would be here to speak for themselves, especially the director, to talk about this. I also have problems with, I was reading through the bylaws, and the more I read through them, and the more it bothered me. That first section that says the purpose, it says A, nurturing and promoting a community appreciation of music, fostering and encouraging the lifelong enjoyment of music performance for its members, and developing and enhancing the musical knowledge and skills of its members. So basically, this is all about what's good for the membership of this band. What is the public purpose? Again, if this is their bylaws from a 501c3, that's perfectly fine. But I just, and again, I don't have any problem with the funding as long as we're not the ones who do everything. And this idea that we can just let them go, I think that we can. But we can't, if they're a 501c3 and they're a community band formed under, they can play anytime they want, and they can call themselves a Helotes Community Band. And it doesn't matter if the city council wants them or not. They can still play. And they can still do, in fact, it's better for them. I heard that there was a group that was interested in them doing a score for some movie. They would make the money from that and be able to keep it and use it for more of their purposes as a 501c3. So if they really want to stay and be viable for a long time, they need to be a 501c3 and not depend on the government and the whims of people.
Jim?
Well, I was and am going to suggest that we try to lower the thermostat on this a little bit, but I do have to say for the record, Cindy, if I were appointed to a committee to look into this further, I think I can make an unbiased decision. And I really, since you said that on the record, I really, a little upset with the fact that you would think that I would not be able to make an unbiased decision because I spoke up and said I was in favor of the band. You said you're in favor of the band.
Yeah.
So either of us can be equally impartial about what's going on. I don't share your need or necessity for a 501c3. I think it's one possible solution. I think it's something that could happen. I think what I'm confused at still, and that's why I would like to slow this down a little bit, I'm confused at, is this an HACB bylaws or is it a city set of bylaws? And it is really an HACB set of bylaws which mentions the city in several places, is how I understand it. Is that a correct?
That was the intent, yes, is just some form for the band to have.
So in practice, we don't have to adopt their set of bylaws except to recognize the fact there's things that we have interactions between them and ourselves. Is that also correct?
I don't have an answer to that, but we can certainly get that answer.
Because I'm intermeshing the thing too closely can create problems, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now, we have a non-broke band, and I really don't want to go too far into one direction that either raises the temperature or raises the position to where we're sitting amongst ourselves and saying, you can't be unbiased in how you do this. That's unfortunate. I ran for public office because I will make an unbiased decision in everything that I do up here. So I stand by that. I'll make a final vote on whatever we do. I don't think we're ready to do a vote on this tonight.
Anything else?
Nope.
Alex?
I would like to see it delayed a little bit to be able to look into some other different options. I do think that us making a formal vote on the bylaws the way they're written is not just an endorsement of the band, but it's a commitment. And maybe that's what they're wanting. But I think that's probably more than I think I'm ready to go at this point, because the first line in there in the mission statement says, the Helotes Area Community Band is an all-volunteer organization sponsored and funded by the city of Helotes. That commits us to that complete and permanent funding in that scenario. And in the last sentence, it talks about that supermajority requirement. I understand what they're looking for, but at the same token, I don't know that we can sit here and bind future councils to the band, despite the fact that we don't know what may come in the way of the city. And this is requiring a four-member vote to do that, when everything else budgetary and every other vote, unless it's a legal vote that requires a show of hands, is a three-member vote. And so this is altering any of that action to a supermajority, and I don't know that a bylaws for a volunteer organization should be able to bind the city into that kind of a commitment. Now, I know you'll have a response to that, and I'm fine with it. I just don't know that I'm ready to do the vote today on this, for that reason.
Where is that? I understand it requires a supermajority to establish, but as far as the funding, where is this?
It's right there in the first line.
Well, okay, can I be a little slower on that?
Mission statement, right there.
Yeah, is an all-volunteer organization sponsored and funded by the city of Helotes. Where are you talking about a supermajority in the first paragraph?
Supermajority is
Page 6.
page 6. The city council may, at its sole discretion at any time with a two-thirds majority vote, amend the bylaws or alter or change the structure, organization, programs, or terminate and dissolve it.
Okay,
So
that's
it requires a two-thirds.
No, sir, what I'm saying, technically, the way I read that, it requires two-thirds to disband the band or to amend it. It does not require two-thirds to approve a budget for that band. It requires basically a simple majority that we do on our budget. You were mentioning budgets before and saying that our budget would require now a supermajority. It does not require a supermajority.
I didn't say the budget would. I
Okay.
just said that this holds the council to a higher standard to eliminate the ban. So.
I misunderstood then. I
that-
apologize,
that's-
because I thought I heard you say that the budget would require a
It's
supermajority.
an inconsistency in the standard that we have.
Okay, fair enough.
And there may be other points in the middle that I think that, I'm not gonna
like I said, at the first time, I'm not gonna go line by line, because none of us want us to do that. But there are other provisions in there which I think are a little bit, in my opinion, a little problematic. It's fine if you're gonna deal with a group of volunteers, but this, a lot, and I'm a member of a bunch of different volunteer organizations, and I'm a member of board of directors and all that. And the wording, a lot of this does not normally work towards general membership. It works towards elected officers of boards and things of that nature. This is very strongly worded in that, and that's why I'm a little, I mean, it talks about, you know, you can't even resign without giving 30 days notice. Well, obviously, you can't make somebody stay, but the point is,
It doesn't
it's,
say you have to. It says we request 30 days.
I don't know, I didn't quite,
We changed that language.
well, then you must have changed it on the
If it's-
version I don't have.
If it says other than that, let me know. Tell me where it says that.
I requested to, okay.
There you go. We took all of those kinds of terms out of there because it is a volunteer, and like you say, we can't make somebody.
It does
Give
put a
notice.
commitment
We just-
upon the city that future councils may or may not want to, and it
All they have to
kind
do
of
is
binds
vote.
everything, so, thank you.
Anything else? Bert?
I'll just say what I said a while ago. All Chuck and Charlie wanted was something that they could put their hands on and have a hard copy of something that we can't just say, hey, look, no more band. So what it is
That one person can't.
that one person can't. That with the way this is written on page 6 on C, it says that it's gonna take a supermajority to do away with the ban. That's what they wanted. Now, the rest of this stuff that you're talking about, I'm confused. I mean, I'm not, I still think we might be overthinking this a little bit, or maybe a lot, but that's all they were looking for whenever these bylaws were talked about and came to fruition. So, other than that, all this other stuff you're talking about, I don't have any idea. So,
Paul?
I'm kind of like Bert, I just kind of saw this when I read it as, this is an organization that wants some rules to govern themselves, is the way I kind of saw it, but I did have a little concern about the indemnification, but that was kind of cleared up, but on any volunteer,
Yeah.
correct? Any volunteer that comes in here, goes out in the park, breaks their leg,
Our part-time special events assistants, all of those folks are covered by our insurance.
I mean, that's the way I saw it, was just a set of rules for those guys to govern themselves.
Yeah, basically, that's what they've had. They have a very simple little set of bylaws. Just in talking to Chuck and Charlie through the years, I thought it would be nice to have something a little more formal. Just in the band's defense, from some of the things that Councilmember Massey said, they really didn't ask for any of this. They didn't ask for the supermajority. They didn't ask for a lot of it. A lot of it came from just Rick and me putting some ideas together to try and make it a little more clear, the relationship between the city and the band. And quite frankly, we do sponsor and fund the band. We have for 10 years. And that's why that language is in there. It's all very simple language. And as far as the band directors not being here, I didn't even mention this to him. I thought about it, but I certainly didn't think that it was going to be this kind of contentious thing, so that's shame on me. But don't blame the band directors, because I don't believe either one of them probably even realized it's on the agenda. And so, like I say, don't look down upon them for not being here, because it's certainly not their fault. I will say that this band is unique. It's well-known in the region. As you remember, in 2015, Charlie Kuntz was nominated and recognized as the ACOG Regional Citizen of the Year for not only being the band director here, but some of the other accomplishments he's had. And like I say, you guys can postpone it indefinitely. That's fine with me. And if you have some thoughts, it would be nice if you have some of these concerns, especially on the code and everything, to let us know ahead of time, and we can be a little better prepared to respond to it. But I would say from the tone of the deal, just a amendment to the motion to postpone indefinitely would work, and then you guys give us your ideas on how to improve this. And if you don't want to have bylaws, then we won't have bylaws. So that, I don't know what else to say.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a
Sure.
question? So you say that the band already has bylaws.
They have just short bylaws within their
So
own
why
organization.
is this one coming here when the ones that they had already before didn't? What's the
Because
difference?
this ties them more or less to the city, and it gives them a little confidence that just one person on the council, a future mayor or a simple majority, can't just disband them willy-nilly, because it's a very tight group, and they hope to be here for many years to come and continue helping the community. And that was just, it was my idea, frankly, to have the supermajority, just to prevent a couple of new council members coming in and just deciding they want to get rid of the ban. So it would take a supermajority, and this supermajority is not unusual. Everything like this doesn't have to be a simple majority just because the budget's a simple majority. But if you want a simple majority, if that'll help you with the bylaws, then we'll make it a simple majority. I really don't care. I just wanted to have something a little more formal in the way of assuring the band that the city recognizes who they are as an organization. If we were paying a band for the rehearsal time, the performances, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for the hours that they put in. And we have, they do 12 concerts a year in the community. They've gone to nursing homes. They do a lot of extra little things that you guys aren't even aware of. Some of you, I don't remember ever seeing you at a real concert. So you don't really maybe understand the camaraderie that's there. But I know Bert's been to a bunch. Paul's helped at some. Jim's been to some. But it means a lot. Cynthia's been to a couple here recently. But I don't know, it's just a great organization, and people know about us. And we've played in the Capitol Rotunda and hoping to do that again. And I don't know, it's just a nice organization. And, you know, if you guys have heartburn over the band, then just let us know and
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
start looking. But we need an amendment to postpone indefinitely, if that's what you want to do.
can we have further comment, or are we?
Sure. Want to do another round? Cynthia, go ahead.
Like I said, they want us, they don't want to be disbanded. They don't want some council to just disband them. And so this puts too much onus on the city council, this city council or any other city council. They need, again, if the reason we're doing bylaws is because they don't have a formal organization apparently in their minds, because they're not a 501c3. If they were, they could do their own bylaws, and they would not have to worry about being disbanded by us. They might have to be worried in future times of not being funded, but if something happens and they can't be funded, I don't see that happening. It's it isn't a whole lot of money, but if I just think that's the best route for them, and I don't mind postponing this indefinitely.
Okay, and just to reassure you, I don't think any of them lose sleep worrying about whether or not they're going to be disbanded. Jim?
Well, what I hear, and I'm not going to use the Godfather analogy, but what I hear, what you say about the band is different in some ways than what I'm reading in this document. I think if we get back to the intent is for the band to have a set of bylaws, as I understand it, that have a little more cooperative agreement between themselves and the city. That could be done with a different cooperative agreement that's separate from their bylaws. B, it could be done basically with putting these things together. We can't disband the band. We can basically defund the band, but I don't care what you put in this document, we can't disband the band in reality. They can all walk off and not play their instruments, but we can't we can tell them they can't play on city property, but we can't disband the band other than the name of Helotes Community Band. So
We can't even do that. We don't own the name.
I'm not,
Yeah, just let him finish.
I got into trouble on the last election because I too closely tried to put a logo that was the Helotes Community Band basically on my campaign brochures, and was told that I couldn't do that. So there is a concept of a Helotes Community Band that's out there. I just wish that we would get back to the fact that they want to set bylaws, we want to say that we're supporting them, and I'm saying that's fine. As far as, I can't get my arms around the fact that we have the right or the obligation to support them or to disband them. We're not there. That's not our job. Our job is to basically, right now, for the 5 people that sit here, as I understand it, at least speaking for myself, I will, we support a Helotes Community Band. We support the concept of them being our quasi-official band, if you will, and we support the idea of funding them. The more we get down the road of saying that we're not part of them, they're not part of us, then someone's going to say, you know what? We got another recession coming on in 2019. We're not going to fund the band this year. That's our prerogative. We have the right to say that. But we can't disband the band. And I don't want to go to some place that says we're sitting down and saying the band is on or off based upon what this council or future council says. So I also quarrel with the idea of indefinite. That sounds like we're kicking the can down the road and not doing something. I'd like to have each of us who've spoken up say, here are our objections or here's our support, get those back to the administration and to the band and say what they think about it. And then get something back here in a finite, not an indefinite period of time that says we're going to act on this sometime in the first quarter of 2019. Because I don't want to sit this thing, have it fester and become a major issue, a more major issue, for no good reason. Because we all support the band. We all support the concept of them having bylaws. We have different ideas about whether it should be a C3 or whether it's C5 or some other vehicle. That's not the question. The question, that's up to them to decide if they want to be a C3. It's up to us to decide if we want to have a community band, whether or not that's an official logo, in my opinion. So that's my position on it.
Again, just to be clear, the band did not ask for these bylaws.
Good, understood.
We just felt like it would be nice to have something a little more formal than what we have now.
And there's a
which is
long
just
way between a little more formal and what we have here tonight.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Alex?
I have a tendency to agree with my colleagues on the fact that, well, there's no question I support the band. I think they're a wonderful thing. I also support us providing funding for the band. And I don't have any question with that whatsoever. I do completely understand that they want some level of assurance of continuity in their function. I think that we can accomplish that with a proclamation that says we support the band and that we will continue to do so unless a majority, or even if the council wishes a supermajority, at some future time decides to unfund the band. I don't know that we have to be the ones to approve their bylaws. I think they can have their own bylaws and regulate whether their dress code and their acceptance and their, other procedures are their own. I don't know that we have to approve their bylaws. Obviously, we didn't see or even know that they had bylaws before, however brief they might have been. But I don't know that we have to endorse those formally in this process. But if their primary concern is some level of confidence in continuity, one, we do that on the budget every year. It requires, a majority of council to provide the budget. So whether we do this or not, if you want my opinion, I would say not do the bylaws, but we then in turn come back at a future meeting and make some sort of proclamation indicating that we support the band, we're willing to fund the band, and that at a future time, in order to defund the band, it's either done through the bylaws or through a majority of the council. If that solves their concern about the continuity, that's fine, and they can do their own thing with their bylaws. That would be my preference.
Okay. Bert?
I'm just a little confused on it. If they wanted to become a nonprofit, they would have to do everything themselves. Is that correct?
Yes.
They would have to do everything themselves. And I think that's what probably the issue would be with them, is, in order to become a nonprofit, you'd have to have a president, an executive vice president, secretary, treasurer, all that.
You only need two
Well,
or three.
that
I think
means-
there's three.
I
There's three
think you're gonna
positions.
need more than that.
No,
But
it's
anyway, I mean, to me, that's putting more burden on them. Now, if we can get done, if we can give them, like Alex said, if we can give them the, you know, the backing with the proclamation, if that'll, okay, with the proclamation, and if that'll cover what they're, because I know that's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about, and like you were saying, I think it's the reason that the mayor, I might be wrong, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but the reason he wanted a supermajority is because you can have 3 council members elected in a year, and that's a majority, and they can get rid of the ban. It could be, I'm not saying anybody would do that, but they might run on that platform saying, hey, look, we're spending too much money on these guys. Okay? And then they're gone.
We can do that now.
Yeah.
No, I understand that, but what I was talking about an election, I mean.
No, I'm talking about if we elect a new council with 3 new members, and they say we're not gonna fund the
That's what I
band
just
next year.
said.
Yeah.
That's what I just said.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
I
that's-
think that's what where the supermajority
You
lies.
just remove it from the budget.
Yeah.
You just remove it from the budget.
If we remove the money, we don't have a band.
Okay, then if we're gonna,
Unless they do their own
hold on,
thing.
if we're gonna remove the money, first thing I'm getting rid of is the parade.
No, I understand, but
I
I'm
mean,
just
the
saying,
band is menial compared to the parade and jazz night and all that. We spend a bunch more money on others. The band is a drop in the bucket.
Bert,
compared to
all I'm
everything
saying
else.
is that, to your point, we can defund the band, we can't disband the band.
No, I know that.
Okay, well, just,
But I mean, it'd be the parade before them. So, anyway, that's all I had.
Paul?
No, everything's been said. Please tell me.
Well, I certainly had no idea it would turn into this by just bringing this to council, but I appreciate all the input. So I would say what would be in order, as I mentioned before, I don't know whether approving or denying this would really make any difference, and it's not ready to be voted on like that, I guess. So an amendment to postpone indefinitely just means it's killed for now, and we may or may not bring it back later. So if you want to amend your motion to postpone indefinitely, and then see if we get a second to it, that would be great. And if you don't want to make that motion, perhaps someone else will.
I'm not for the bylaws at all as they are written. I don't think that that's something, I agree with Councilmember Blue, so I am not going to add that. I'm just going to leave, I don't think we need an amendment. I think we should just vote on what was before us and deny it. And I think we should come back with a proclamation or a resolution supporting them. That's what I think we should do. So no, I'm just going to leave it the way it is.
Would anyone else like to make an amended motion to postpone indefinitely?
I would make an amended motion, but I quarrel with the word indefinite. I'd like to move the motion that we reconsider the bylaws action in the next 90 days and come up with a plan for a definite vote.
You can't postpone to a time certain
Then-
more
then
than 2 meetings away, and I don't
indefinite's
think
fine.
we can bring it back that quick.
Okay, indefinite's fine.
So a definite,
Yeah.
do we have a second to postpone indefinitely?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. A yes vote would be to postpone indefinitely. A no vote would be to deny the postponement. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no.
Nay.
Okay, we have one nay or one no vote, Massey, and 4 yes votes. Certainly been educational, and I appreciate your input. With that, we're done with our agenda. Are there any objections to adjourning?
None.
We're adjourned at 8:20.